Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us for another episode. I hope you all have had a great day. And today we're going to be discussing something that may be a little touchy. And I don't know if you all have realized, but the episodes this month has kind of been following a common theme. And similar to last month, we discussed a lot about friendships and relationships and how to handle relationships that have gone on, or how to know when the right time to leave a friendship or a relationship. We discussed those things in length last month in the episodes. And the month prior to that, we talked a lot about God's plan for us and following His will and not acting upon our own heart and our own wants and needs, but actually seeking the Lord. This month, we've covered a variety of different things. We talked about bullying. We've talked about conflict, and this episode and the next episode, you'll probably start to realize the common theme, you know, amongst all the episodes that's been released. And this month, not this month, in today's episode, we're going to discuss grief. And grief can be a very sensitive thing for people because there's different types of grieving. There's grief when you lose a loved one. There's grief when you have ended a friendship or a relationship. And there's grief of materialistic things even. So we're going to discuss healthy ways to grieve. And this is not going to be like a guide to tell you how to grieve, but because everyone grieves in their own way. But my goal is just to basically talk about my experience with grief, and maybe you will be inspired by it and maybe want to help someone else, because in times of grief, we really just need someone to talk to, a shoulder to cry on. So we're going to discuss those things today, and it's a touchy subject, and I'm going to try not to be too long about it, but this is something that is really kind of near and dear to my heart. So there has been times that I've lost loved ones or lost pets that really, really tore me apart. And this past year, my sister and I lost our stepmom, and it was something that was very sudden. It was something that no one was expecting at the time. It was just all of a sudden. And when you have the feeling of shock and then grief on top of that, it can create something that is really not healthy for your mental health. The reason I say that is because you have so many feelings in the moment that you don't know how to process everything. I think it's normal for people. Every time something sudden happens, you just have to take a minute to just process it, soak it in, kind of just have a reaction to it. In a situation like death, where it's shocking and so sudden, you don't even really have the time to react because it's just there. It just happens. You just see it. And it's no matter what you say, no matter what you do, it can bring the person back. So when it comes time to when you finally feel that you can accept it, and this can take months, this can take years, I have to admit, I don't even think no, it's not that I don't even think, I know that I'm not even over what happened. But, because like I said, it was a traumatic experience. And when you have those traumatic experiences, it's not just something that you can just get over, but there are ways to grieve in a healthy way. And like I said, the goal of this episode is not to tell anyone how to grieve, and I'm not a counselor, but the goal is to basically just let you know what helped me. Because a month after this happened, I had to go back to school for another semester. And there was a short period of time, where I honestly felt depressed. And like it was a feeling that I've never experienced. Because not only was I dealing with that loss, the loss of my stepmom, but I knew that when I went back, I didn't have the same people there to lean on because they have already gone on with their careers, which I was happy for them. But in a time of grief, you really need someone to just to cry with or to cry to. And the people that you do have there, they won't really be able to give you the kind of comfort that you're needing in that time. So, the first couple weeks of the semester was rough. And once I started my classes, I started to, my focus started to shift. And, yes, it was still in the back of my mind, but I had something else that was keeping my mind busy. And I was able to make friends in my department, and we were able to go out and able to do things. And, the semester went on, but, it was just at the beginning of the semester, it was just so rough because I had, so much on my mind. And it didn't help that there was a lot of other issues, personal issues going on at the school that was kind of not helping my grieving process. So my last semester at college was not the easiest because I had a mix of different things going on. I was worried about what was going on at home. I wasn't completely over what happened. So it was just, at that time, I really had to lean on the people that I had. And this is where utilizing your village really comes in handy. Like the people that I met last semester, I wasn't close to before, but I became close to them. And once we started hanging out and getting to know each other more, I thought less about what happened this summer. And I'm not saying that I was over it. I'm not saying that I forgot about it. But like I mentioned in a previous episode, as time goes on, you know how to handle it better. It doesn't mean that you're over it, but you know how to handle it. Because before I went back to school, there was a month period where I was still at home where she passed. So there would be times that I get flashbacks, and there'd be times that I would just zone out and just get these random memories and things. It really wasn't helping my stress level. And I was thinking that if I went back to school, that it was going to go away. And boy, was I wrong. I was wrong. But, now I can say that I know how to handle it better. I'm not over it. I'll still always love and care for her, but I know she's in a better place. And I think that sometimes that's all it really takes. When we're still the ones here that are bearing the grief, we just have to remember where they are. Now, it may be hard for some people who don't have a belief in Jesus and they don't believe in heaven or hell. But I think it is really important for people to try to surround themselves with people that will help bring them to a congregation where they can hear the truth, because I think that's when grief is really the hardest, especially for a Christian family. If you lose a loved one and they weren't saved, it can be even harder because if you're saved, you'll never see them again. And that's heartbreaking. It really is heartbreaking. you know. And I'm just glad and I'm thankful that, my stepmom was saved, and I know that we'll see her again. So I mean, that helps me. That helps me. But I can't bear to think about someone who has a loved one who was not saved. It's just it's really sad. It's heartbreaking. But during the grieving process, we have to be able to realize that the way we grieve, it can't affect someone else's mental health, because that's when you know that it's not healthy. When you start to lash out on everyone, when you start to mistreat everyone, it's not fair to them. Like, yes, you're in your feelings, but if the other person was in their feelings too, because you have to remember, you're not the only one who lost a loved one. You're not the only one that lost your mom. Your brother lost their mom. There's loss from everyone. So we have to try to be considerate. And I know it's hard because we get in our feelings, but that's the time when we really need to go seek other counsel. It's really good to... Well, let me tell you what I did. Because like I said, the first month was hard. And as time went on, sorry, let me repeat that. The first 2 months were hard because it was a month before I went back to school, and it was a month during school that I was having a hard time. And luckily I had friends who were there for me over the phone. They couldn't be there in person. And after that time period, like, there's some people, when they lose a loved one, they're mad at God, and I can completely understand their pain. I can completely understand their anger, because we're like, Lord, why would you do this to me? Why would you take this person from me? You know that I depended on them. You know that I loved them. Why would you try to hurt me like that, Lord? And we can't answer for God. And there's going to be times where you're going to be so confused with what God's doing. And me saying I understand, it may sound like I'm contradicting what I've said in the past, talking about my relationship with Jesus, but we have to understand we're human. We're Christians, but we're also human. And our flesh is going to react. So what I did, and some people can't do this, what I did was I started to go to Bible studies. I started to kind of flood my mind with more positive thoughts. And, after my stepmom passed, I think it was 2 weeks after. Yeah, 2 weeks. We had church camp. So it took my mind away from it for a little bit, and I still have my moments. But being able to, like, debrief and just fill your mind with just, God's word and things like that, it'll bring you peace. And I'm not saying that it's going to take all your pain away. I'm not. That is not. And, we're human, like I said. Even just because you read a passage in the Bible, it doesn't mean that you're going to forget about what happened to your loved one. But what I would do, and what I did, is every day I would say a prayer and just ask the Lord to help me handle the loss. I asked the Lord to help me accept the loss, and help remind me that she's in a better place, and that I would be able to see her again, and that my family would be able to all be together again one day in heaven. I asked the Lord to help me be able to grieve in a healthy way, so that way my grief wouldn't affect the mental health of others. I asked the Lord to bring people into my life that were going to surround me with love, and that were going to care for me and not judge me, or not try to hold anything that I may have said in the past against me, but to bring people into my life that were going to help me and to be there to give me a hug if I needed it. So sometimes it's just talking to God. And like I said, there may be people that are upset with God. I can understand it. But we have to remember, God does things for a reason. And we may not understand the reason, but the Lord may reveal it in due time. But in the meantime, if you don't feel like you're ready to talk to God, at least listen to some sermons. Because as Christians, we need God in our life. And I get that sometimes in grief, it may be easy to just distance from God. But it's good to, because as Christians, we're going to be spiritually hungry. And especially in a time of grief, when we feel we are alone, that's when we need God the most. And that's when He's the closest to us. So keep that in mind. If you aren't ready to pray, if you aren't ready to read your Bible and open your word, at least turn on a sermon. If you have a local church that you go to, just watch their sermons online or listen to it. Do something. I also recommend to get a devotional book. They have plenty, and I mean plenty of devotional books at Barnes and Nobles, and they have some for men, they have some for women, they have some for children. And I have this devotional book. It's a 365-day devotional book, and it'll have a prayer and it will have a passage to read every single day. And if you feel that you aren't ready to like go into the church, but you want to stay at home and just kind of talk to God in private, maybe get yourself one of those devotional books and just spend time with the Lord. As time goes on, He's going to help you through it. He will help you through the grief. And this, like I said, you will never be over it, but it will help you handle it better. Like I said earlier, sometimes our grief can affect the mental health of others, and we got to be careful about that. Because we're not the only ones at a loss. You know, we have to think about the other family members. We have to think about their friends. We have to think about everyone else that they may have cared for or who cared for them. They're hurting too. So we got to keep these things. We got to keep these things in mind. And like, when you grieve and you start to attack other people, it only hurts them more, and it's only going to push other people away. But in reality, you need those people to be closest to you. Now, there's some people during your grief, you realize you don't need in your life anymore because they're going to be more of a harm than a help. That's okay. Those may be the people that you may want to cut out. And there's some people, once the person passes away, their family just disassociates with you. I mean, that'd be okay. You know, some people, their ties with you are just that person. And so once that person is gone, or once that person breaks up with you, or once that person cuts you out of their life, the family's gone too. And you have to be lucky to have someone that is still around after that. Be thankful for that. Be grateful. Be grateful for that, because not everyone has that, So my suggestions about grieving a loss of a loved one would be: take time for you, spend time in your word. If you do not want to spend time in your word, listen to some sermons online, get a devotional, seek people and surround yourself with people who are going to help uplift you and surround you with love and just be there for you to vent or to cry to. Cut people out who are going to, you know, provoke you more or hinder you from healing. Because sometimes people can hinder the grieving process too by their words. And like when someone's grieving, you got to be careful of the words that you use. You really do. You got to be careful of the jokes that you make because it's a sensitive thing. It's a sensitive thing. And there's different types of grieving. Like, there's people who are sad. There's sometimes people who are mad. And even some people are happy. And I'm not talking about like grieving of loss of a loved one. I'm just talking about grief in general, and we're going to get to those different things later. But if you are someone who has lost a loved one, you really need to try to seek someone to talk to vent to, and you have to utilize your village, utilize your resources. Find someone or something for you that's going to bring you joy. And then check out those devotionals I suggested. It has something for you every single day. And there's even these journals that you can get, or you can write in it all the time. And it's like, during these times, it's important to reflect on the memories, because that's something that can't be taken away from you, is the memories. So just think about those. And yes, it's not the same, but just stay prayed up, get your relationship right with Jesus, and you'll know that you'll see him again one day. But like I said, it's important to not take out your grief or your anger out on someone who doesn't deserve it. And we talked about this before, but in a time of grief, it's more common that can happen, and it doesn't help their mental health. It only hinders them. It only hurts them. And we should be trying to build a life for us together and try to move forward together, because we have to, and it may be hard to hear, but we have to learn to live life without the person that we lost. So the people who are there, don't try to argue with them. Don't try to argue with them. Bring them in closer. Spend more time with them, Love them. Appreciate those people. So if you have any comments or questions about, grieving a loss of someone that you loved, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it in my DMs, which I'll link in the description box. But like I said, there's other types of grief, and sometimes we can grieve the loss of materialistic things. And there's sometimes, like I said, there's sometimes that our grief will lead to happiness, or during the grieving period, we'll be happy. So, about that technical difficulties, but there will be times where you're going to be a little joyful. Now, when I say happiness, I'm not saying that people are happy about the loss. But what you are happy about, and I can't speak for everyone, like I said, I'm speaking about myself. But sometimes when you feel happiness, you just think about everything that you learned from that person, or everything that you were able to teach them, or everything that you were able to, do together. And that's why the memories matter, because memories, once you lose someone, the memories are something that you can't, that can't be taken away from you. So hold on to those and try to find something that'll bring you joy, because it's normal to have those times of sadness. It's normal to have those times of, of happiness. And there's going to be some times where you're going to have anger, like I discussed earlier, where you'll be upset with God. So When you may be losing something of materialistic value, like say for instance a car, you have to realize that not everything on this earth is permanent. In fact, actually nothing's permanent. Everything will perish because we will live eternal life with Jesus Christ if we are saved. So when people talk about the loss of materialistic things, it doesn't mean that their grief of that thing is not validated, but it means that we have to know, and as Christians, we should know that materialistic things last a short period of time. So it's important to appreciate the things that we have, because once we go to heaven, we won't even need those things. And it's hard for some of us to believe that when we go to heaven, we won't need cell phones. We won't need cell phones. We won't need cars. We won't need money. Like, we're going to be spending eternal life with Jesus, worshiping him. And it's hard for the flesh to think about that because, the life here is it's just life. It's just the norm. It's just something that we do. We don't think about something that could be better. Better in the eyes of us on the earth is having more money, having a better car, having a better house, having the best, I don't know, electronics or something like that. Our version of the best is very materialistic. And so when we lose those things, sometimes we don't know how to react. We start to have those same feelings that we have when we have lost a loved one. And we shouldn't, I'm trying to see how to word this. We shouldn't be trying to depend on having these materialistic things. And we shouldn't be treating them as equals to a loved one, if that makes sense. Like, our grief for a loved one shouldn't be the same for if we were to lose like a cell phone or something. But there's some people who are like that. And sometimes in these times of grief, it shows us where our priorities are. Have those times of sadness. It's normal to have those times of frustration and happiness. But if we can go years and years without talking to God because our loved one has gone on, I think that shows where our priorities are. And it is important to not idolize people. It's important to not idolize things. It's good to love people. It's good to love our things. But if it weren't for God, we wouldn't even have those people or those things. So we got to think a little bit outside the box. Who is it that's giving us these things? Who is it that's providing us to have this life to live? So we got to make sure that our priorities are straight in our times of grief, because if our heart is 100% invested in this person or in that thing, but it wasn't invested at all in God or not enough in God, then we're not going to know how to live our lives without that person or thing, because we treat that person or thing as if it's like our breath, or if it's like our heartbeat. Like, we can't live without it. Like I said, not everything on this earth is permanent. Everything will perish, and we will live eternal life with Jesus Christ if we're saved. We just got to ask him into our hearts and accept him as Lord. But we can't do that, and we can't live a life according to Jesus if we're going years and years without talking to him because of something that he may have done to us. But what we don't realize is God already has a plan for us. He knows when we're going to die. He knows when we're going to die, like I said. He knows when we're going to betray him. And it's important to keep these priorities straight. It's important to, have life outside of that person because God is our life. So I know I've done a little bit of rambling towards the end, but these things are important because, like I said, if you don't have your priorities straight, once we lose that person or lose that thing, the grieving process is going to be 100 times worse because we don't know what to do without the person or thing. We just depended on this person for years on end. Now we don't know what to do without them. But that's where God comes in. That's where your village comes in. So utilize your village, utilize your resources, go to God in prayer, take time to listen to some sermons, go to the Barnes and Nobles or the library and try to find yourself a devotional and try to plug yourself back in. And some of these things that I'm saying, it may sound easier said than done, but you won't know unless you try it because, like I said, it's helped me. And I'm not 100% over it, but I at least know how to handle it. And I feel that the Lord has had a tremendous hand in my grieving process, and I thank Him for that. So I hope that if you are someone who is going through this personally, that you just take the time and just go to the Lord in prayer and don't take out your frustration or your anger on anyone else because they are affected too. They're hurting too. They may not be as hurt as much as you are, but everyone grieves differently, and we can't judge someone else's grief. Because there will be some people who will be like, "Well, I haven't really seen you cry. I haven't seen you really fall out." First of all, your grief, your personal grief, is not the business of other people. So you need to make sure to set that boundary. But people grieve differently. You don't have to cry if you don't want to. You don't have to be mad if you don't want to. You don't have to be happy if you don't want to. And I'm not telling you how to grieve, but what I will say is that you don't want the time that you lash out or that you take out your frustrations on the other person. You don't want that to be the time that you push them away, because in the time of grief, when you need the people the most, you're going to feel so much more lonely, and you need those people into your life. So don't do anything to push them away. If anything, try to bring them in. And it's okay to say, I'm not okay today. I just need to be left alone. It's okay to take mental health days. But don't push the people who are there for you and love you away. Bring them in. Don't push them away. I hope you all have enjoyed the episode. Let me know down below if you have something that you would like to talk about. Or you can comment in my DMs, which I will link in the description. And I just thank you for taking time to listen. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you.